Hello, everybody, and welcome back to an episode of the Redwater Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Yasar.
And I'm Chemo.
And it's been a little while since we dropped an episode. We're getting back into it. So far, it's been a really exciting 2024 season so far. I would say we've had some fantastic races over the past three races. As we're recording right now, the Austrian GP ended, and we're getting ready for Silverstone coming up pretty soon. It's this weekend, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, but so this episode, I want to start off, first of all, by having a serious conversation about why in the hell George Russell decided to celebrate his Austria win by saying yabba dabba doo. Like, so when he did the like, the that celebration, whatever, when he got pole in
In
Canada,
Canada.
whatever, like that was kind of corny, but like I thought that was a little bit funny, right?
Mhm.
This is too corny. I can't defend it. I can't defend this at all. Like I didn't even find it funny, bro. Like that's insane. Like there's no way you're on like a national stage right now. You just won like your second race of your entire career, and the first thought that goes to your head is, "Oh, let me yell yabba dabba doo right now." That's come on,
He didn't even yell it. He didn't yell it. He went off script. I swear to God, this dude had no idea he was going to win this race. And I don't think he even realized when he crossed the finish line, like, holy shit, I just won.
man.
Because, like, afterwards, he was, and you saw, like, when he got out of the car, he kind of did, like, a half
Yeah.
version of, like, he almost, like, stumbled out. The dude had no idea where he was.
Mhm.
He was too high up.
No, I thought
I,
that was absolutely ridiculous.
no.
Cause I didn't even see it live. You were the one that texted me about it, and then I went back to like listen to it, and I was just like, oh my God, come on. I feel like we need to add in like the conversations we had about, qualities that a driver needs to have, to be like a world champion. I feel like their media presence and their kind of personality in race winning situations needs to be analyzed too, because imagine this man winning, a world championship, and as he's
Mhm.
crossing the line in Abu Dhabi, he says like corny ass shit like how you like them apples or something like that. Like, come on, man. Like, how do we go from Fernando Alonso's iconic celebrations in like 2007 to freaking
Mhm.
this? That
No,
I thought that was absolutely ridiculous.
You're totally right, man. This dude is way too corny for this sport. He's like the complete opposite of Hamilton,
Mhm.
and I yeah, I don't know. So he's got to hire a new
We need
PR
to
guy.
bring back Hamilton thanking the
Yeah.
fans after a race win, man. I miss that. I miss that so
I
much.
want to take him back to the factory. Yeah, like
Mhm.
that shit.
Yeah.
Just the normal stuff. I think Russell saw what Vettel used to do, and was like, I could do that.
Yeah, but this is not that.
No,
This is not
no.
that.
Mhm.
Oh my God. All right. I just want to quickly bring that up. Since we're talking about Austria though, I think we should kick off properly with kind of, the biggest controversy. Well, it's not even
The
really
elephant in the room.
controversy. Yeah, but the biggest elephant in the room, at least so far this
Mhm.
season, also the Lando and Max Verstappen clash. And let's just start off, both you and I already agree that was 100% Max's fault, right?
Yes,
And
I think that the difficult was really like
mhm,
it was a difficult incident.
mhm.
I think there was a lot of stuff that led up to it, but no matter how you spin it, whether you look at it just that incident or the whole thing, in my opinion, it's no one's fault but Max's.
Well, so that's the thing. One, I feel like a lot of the kind of conversations I've been hearing about it are trying to like look at the situation as a whole, say like, oh yeah, but Lando was also being aggressive, yada yada yada. But I feel like before you even talk about that, just talk about the individual incident itself, and we're like isolating just that incident. Max was like Lando was on the outside, he did not move. Max very much went into him and caused that collision. And then
Yeah.
if we do bring in the larger conversation, it's like that's where I think, because people are still trying to, and this goes back to, everyone's obviously, bringing back up 2021 against Lewis or whatever, saying, oh, this is just, hard racing. I think there's always a line to it. There's hard but fair racing. I think everything that Lando was doing before was hard but fair. Like one of the lunges he had where he very much did like push Max wide and pushing him off the track. He gave that position back, and that to me is like, okay, it's fair. He also acknowledged like, okay, yeah, maybe I was being like a little too ballsy there. But I think a lot of the other moves, or at least from what I saw before, I don't think there was any problem with that whatsoever. And regardless of how quote unquote aggressive he was being, that doesn't justify what Max was doing at all. Like Max was legitimately like moving like very, very late under braking.
Mhm. And I've heard it was Max and a couple of his, I would say, supporters. That sounds like a little wrong, but I feel like his fan base, for the most part, is saying like, "Oh, but Max claims that like he wasn't moving under braking, or that if you look at the onboard, like you can see him like the way he's
Mhm.
tilting his steering wheel. And I think I messaged you and a couple other people too that like I had a feeling that after the onboards are going to come out, people are going to pretend they know how to drive at 200 miles an hour
Yeah.
on an uphill right-hander, and like they don't. That turn is a difficult turn, yeah,
Mhm.
but if you look at the aerial, it does not. I don't care. Like if you look at the aerial, he moves to the left,
Yeah,
and
like, it's so
he has
clear,
raced that
so
track.
clear.
It's so obvious. If you're someone like Max who's raced that track over and over and over, and you know that Norris is coming on the outside, I'm sorry. Like, what? There's no excuse. I mean, like you know exactly how that's going to play out.
Mhm.
As someone who's Max has done moves on the outside of that turn and the inside of that turn. He knows how that turn goes.
Mhm.
And he had a mile on the inside. And that turn probably still would have been his at the apex, no, regardless. I don't think Lando was going for a move. I think Lando was trying to do a mini switchback so that he could set up the DRS
Yeah.
and punch it right down that
Mhm.
last straight, or yeah, the last DRS straight. So I just don't see I don't see the point of squeezing Lando that hard. You know,
Mhm.
if Max was confident enough in his ability, he had 3 DRS zones coming up on the next lap to do something.
I think maybe it's like, well, I think the way Lando positioned himself also, I think like you said, yeah, either he was going for a switchback or he expected that if he tried to stay like side by side with Max, maybe more like in the middle of the track by the time they were mid corner, that Max would probably squeeze him out anyway. So he was just planning on staying like as far out wide as he could. And then
Mhm.
I guess from Max's perspective, it's just he either maybe he didn't realize like how close Lando was, or he just wanted to just squeeze him even more to like kind of scare him off, get him to back out, trying to like to basically back out of trying to do the switchback if that was what he was going for, something like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, regardless, it's just I don't know. I think it was very poor decision making by Max, like you just said. It was really unnecessary at that time, and it's
Mhm.
just so frustrating. Also, the fact that oh, not even Lando's DNF, but the fact that then afterwards, when they both had punctures, then you have Max also literally blocking Norris on the straight, pushing him into the grass. Like,
Pushing him
yo, are
off.
you
Mhm.
serious, bro? Are you serious?
That is more telling of like the problem here
Mm,
than the actual incident. That incident could have happened between any two drivers, because someone like Hamilton or Leclerc could totally just misjudge the situation. I know that people have pulled up onboard footage, or sorry, footage from previous races in previous years where people just use the curb.
mm,
And I want to say something really quick about that. That like just because other people have done it does not mean Lando is supposed to do it. Should he have done it to try to save his race? Maybe, but him going into that corner, he is not supposed to go on the like off the track with two wheels, right? That's not
mm.
what the rules say. He's
He also
allowed
did
room.
not think, yeah, that Max was gonna come back any more left than he already had. Because why wouldn't he?
No, why? He had a mile on the inside.
Yeah.
And yes, the bigger problem is that after that incident, like you could tell Max was salty as hell
Hmm.
and tried to block him and get him off the track. Like, what are you doing,
Yeah.
dude? It's it can be argued that because the side of the track that went off, or sorry, the
Mm,
side of the car of Lando's car that went off was the side that was damaged,
mm,
that if he hadn't done that, the puncture might have been just good enough for him to get back to the pits and
mm.
still maybe have been basically where Max was at the end of the race.
Yeah.
But no, I think that sealed the deal that all that damage was then on Lando's car, and there
Hmm.
was no way he was going to make it
Yeah.
without destroying his floor.
No, yeah, that was one thing that happened also at the end, like when he just, went to the pit lane and then just got out of the car. At first I was kind of upset because I was like, Lando, just kind of like the principle, like you got to finish out the race. But I did eventually like think about the fact that oh, maybe the damage really was that bad to where if he had kept going, it would have just, damaged the car even more than it already was. So I don't blame him for getting out of the car at that point, then, especially since he was out of the points. Um,
If they had like a 2 week break, right,
mhm.
until the next race, 100%. They got the end of the triple header though this
Yeah,
weekend
yeah.
at a race that Lando wants to do well at, and I
Mhm.
think also mentally he just probably was just out of it.
Oh no, yeah,
I'm
mentally for
sure.
sure he
Yeah.
was done. Plus, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yep.
and plus there was what 3 laps left or like 4 laps left in the race, so it was what it was at
Something
that
like that.
point. I was gonna
Hmm.
say, what do you think of Max also only getting a 10-second penalty? Because I know some people were saying that. I know one of our friends had said like, oh, they need to bring back drive-throughs, or that definitely was. That definitely should have been a drive-through penalty, not just a 10-second penalty, because that was also part of the why Max was able to keep P5 instead of being taken out of the points like Lando was.
I think if the penalty was specifically about the contact that was made on turn 3, I think 10 seconds is fine.
Yeah, so okay.
Because like I said, I think the greater context of Max and everything, I think pushes people to think like, oh, he needs more punishment,
Mm,
right? But look, seriously, I, like we said before, we're looking at this thing, just this event between these two drivers,
yeah.
right? And maybe some previous context, like context from some previous laps,
Mm,
but nothing more. And because of that, I think 10 seconds is normal. I think that's the right call. I don't think they are. They don't have any sort of precedent to give it any more than that,
mm,
because at the end of the day, it's just that incident. I think if they would have included a penalty about, him pushing him off the track, that probably like, that would, for me, feel like justice, because I think that's a bigger deal.
mm,
But like I said, I mean, it genuinely could have been an honest mistake. Is it still Max's fault? Yeah, 100%. But I think he misjudged
mm.
the
Well, but
situation.
regardless of if it was a mistake, wouldn't change, like the
No.
severity of the penalty. Yeah.
That's what I mean, though, is,
Yeah.
like, no matter if it was a mistake or if it was on purpose or whatever, like, 10 seconds, that's what it's supposed to be.
Mm,
And just because, both he and him had punctures that basically ruined their ability to get even a podium, in which in Lando's case, to not even finish the race,
mm.
you can't take that into account.
Yeah, that's true.
It was still just a puncture, and the damage that was caused afterwards was because he was being scraped around.
Yeah.
Like I said, if they in my opinion, they should have looked at him getting pushed off further, because I think that caused it to be worse.
Mm. Or treated it as
Um,
a separate incident also. So maybe like 10 seconds for
exactly.
that and another 5 second for blocking on the straight or something.
Or that should have been like a more major penalty of like
Mm.
a black flag or something, because that is like, you. Why are you doing that? That's
Yeah.
malicious racing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know why
Yeah, I
Max
feel
was
like
even
not eno-
fighting
I
that.
wasn't seeing enough people talking specifically about that. Everyone was still just talking about the crash and like complain about Lando's moves also. And I'm like, why is no one
Yeah,
talking about him blocking him on the straight?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
guess with that, what's your opinion? I think we've discussed this slightly before, but what's your opinion, I guess, on the narrative that Max is the problem or the way that Max races is very much a problem?
That's a tough one. We have talked about it before. I think going back to 2021, there was definitely some times where Max went way too far over the line.
Mm,
Do I think he's accident prone, or do I think that he's, quote unquote, the problem? No, I think that's a bit harsh. I think everyone on the grid, that's currently up at the top, with maybe a couple exceptions, is perfectly capable of making those same errors and those same overreaches.
mm,
Um, I think you could argue that a couple of Lando's moves, definitely could have ended up that way, right? And I don't think people would be just trying to destroy Lando's reputation the same way they tried to destroy Max's.
mm,
I think it's simply, um, he goes over the line a little bit, but I don't think he's necessarily a problem. I wouldn't
mm.
describe it
And
that
you don't,
way.
yeah, and you don't think he necessarily goes over the line more than, say, I guess like, another, like you said, another driver like of that caliber, like at that level would.
I'll phrase it this way: since
Mm,
2021, how many of these drivers that are currently like fighting for the podium positions, how many of them have been around since then in like race winning conditions, or like
mm,
fighting for the race win?
yeah,
How many of them?
yeah.
Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris. That's about it.
Mm.
Maybe Russell, you could say, after two
No,
wins
but
now.
Russell not even, because even I feel like the wins he's gotten, it hasn't been wins where he really had to like fight whoever was on P2 to like really get that win. Not to like discredit his wins, he got
No,
his
no, no.
wins, but
I don't disagree, but
yeah.
this is my point. Russell, despite not even fitting into that category, we can think about Baku last year, where he made
Mm,
contact with Max into a corner
mm.
that, who the fuck is trying to overtake in that corner?
Yeah,
And,
very
and
true.
afterwards, he was like, "Oh, I just understeered into it." And Max reasonably was like, "Dude, we're all understeering. There's no grip here."
Yeah.
Like, for me, right, to say that, and not just like, well, what am I even talking about? We're talking about Russell. We're talking about the guy. Right? He turned into me. Like, Russell is totally accident prone,
Yeah.
right? And I would say that it's simply for Max. He has been in more of these positions where
Hmm.
it's one or the other kind of thing,
Yeah.
or like someone is gonna get hurt kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to try to skew the data to say that he's accident prone is not looking at the wider picture, the forest,
Mm,
right? That no, he's just in more of these situations than anybody else.
Yeah.
Because every driver I talked about, whether it's Norris, Hamilton, or Leclerc,
Mm.
who are they fighting every time? It's Max. So since 2021, it's always been him.
Mm.
And I feel like with all that data, yeah, of course it's on paper gonna look like he's in more of these incidents.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you because I think, especially people are always trying to call back to 2021, like you mentioned, and say, like, oh, this has been happening since 2021. Like, Max is always the cause of these incidents.
Mhm.
As much as I really want to come up here and tell you that every single one of those incidents was 100% Max's fault, I know that that's not true. There was definitely certain situations, like I'll say, Brazil, like when Max pushed both of them off wide. Yeah, that was Max
Yeah.
being like overly aggressive, yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
But even some of the summer ones, honestly, like even Monza to me, I still can't put 100% blame on either driver on Monza. Like even that, like maybe I put a bit more of it on Max, but it's still like you said, it very much just comes down to you have two drivers fighting for P1. They're both like absolutely giving it their all, and even
Mhm.
2021 was not the first time like we see this. If you go down keep going back down the line of championship battles, there's definitely situations like this. Obviously the most iconic one would be I guess like Senna at Suzuka, even though that one was
Mhm.
intentional. But we'll
You
yeah,
could you could say
we'll
Prost
go.
at Suzuka the year before,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh
right?
yeah, so you have that. No, yeah, so
That one seemed
exactly. It just
so
kind of it
look,
happens all the
this
time.
happens.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
this
And I know
happens.
there was some
And
people that were trying to argue, because I know you mentioned like Leclerc and Norris. Some people were trying to say that Max is the common denominator because they were trying to say at the start of 2022 when he was battling Leclerc that they weren't really having issues like that. They were racing really respectfully. I think that really more just came down to that was the start of a new generation. I think both of them like were still kind of gaining more confidence in the cars that were driving, and also
Mhm.
like the first couple races, even the first 5 races, yes, it was a championship battle, but I don't think it got like heated at that point. And I think by the time you get later into that season, Max already kind of knew that he had overall the better car, and Leclerc couldn't really put a challenge for him. And so that's why I think we
Mhm.
didn't see them clash like he's doing with Norris now. Like now he's clashing with Norris because yes, he's also leading the championship by like 90 points or something, but he's now not like confidently in the faster car. Like he really like I know he knows for a fact he needs to push a lot more to get these wins. So of
Mhm.
course he's racing the way he is now. And that's why
He's
I agree with you in the sense that I don't think he's necessarily the problem. It is just kind of like hard racing. It just gets a little over the line sometimes.
100%, 100%. And I think, to your point, like to back it up, Max said after Spain qualifying when Norris got pole that Max cannot sustain going 110% now every weekend,
Mm.
which implies that that's what he's been doing, and I don't doubt it. In order to, using everything he's ever learned in that car to try to extract every millisecond.
Mm.
And Austria is a great example of that. That the McLaren was definitely the faster car in race pace,
Mm.
and yeah, Max was doing everything he could. You could hear it in his voice after they screwed up his pit stop. You could hear it
Yeah.
that the dude was like, oh, like the last thing he wanted
Mm.
was that because he's got a papaya car breathing down his neck.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I'm not trying to make excuses for the incident, but I am trying to say that you got to take it easy on Max in terms of you can't just say that he is the common denominator for being accident prone. He's the
Mm.
common denominator because he's involved in every single one of these incidents. He's the only one that capable of being in these incidents for race wins and stuff
Yeah.
because he's the only one that's been up front.
Mm. No,
He's the common
especially
denominator
because
up front.
yeah, and I think proof of that is just, everyone, before never really had an issue with Lando, but then boom, Lando is suddenly in a situation now where he can win a race and he's kind of desperate to win the race. And what's he
Hmm.
doing? Kind of deep
Hmm.
lunges, dive bombs.
Hmm.
Like that's just
Hmm.
kind of what happens. And then in terms of also
Hmm.
just other top drivers, causing crashes, obviously Alex Albon can tell you that Hamilton sometimes is not the nicest around a corner either. So, that's just
The
kind of how
Red
it
Bull
is. Yeah.
rear right tire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for
Hmm.
Leclerc, for some reason, he always just crashes by himself and not even with other people. But that's just
You know,
Ferrari
we were
problems.
You mentioned Max and Leclerc in 2022, and I think other than Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, for the most part that season, their battle was defined by one car was better than the other in a certain weekend.
Mm.
I think like Imola was completely Leclerc's fault. Leclerc screwed up. But also the Red Bull was faster that weekend. France and well, I remember Baku, I think Leclerc was in the lead,
Mm.
I think, or was it Perez?
Is
And
Baku 2022? I do not remember that, guys.
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie to you.
Leclerc's engine blew up, is my point. And then
Tough.
Monaco, they screwed up. So this is what I mean is like
Mm,
their battle in the first half of 2022, maybe two races were wheel to wheel,
hmm.
and they were the first two races of a new generation. You're
Yeah,
100% correct
exactly,
that
exactly.
there's no way they would push it to the absolute limit. And Saudi Arabia got crazy because they were doing DRS chicken,
Hmm.
right? If you remember that.
Yeah.
Um, but I also know that um, because of the way that their battles, like I just it doesn't feel the same. It's not the same
Mm.
because they knew there was so much more of the season left,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it also just wasn't as pivotal yet.
No,
It just wasn't.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
Where this is a big moment for Red Bull and for Max, and he knows it
Mm,
because he can kind of sense that the ship is sinking. I'm sure that this is kind of a good transition to talking about Red Bull in general. Max knows that it's just not the same anymore. That
mm,
suddenly it took half a year and now Red Bull is not the same like harmonic symphony.
mm,
It is very much chaotic. His boss and his dad aren't even getting along anymore. Um, his mentor Marco, as much as you can make your criticisms about Marco separately, he means a lot to Max, and Marco's been kind of shunned from the whole operation.
yeah.
Um,
And Josh
so
warned about this when the whole Horner stuff
yeah,
was happening. He said like, "Yo, if he stays, stuff around here is not gonna be nice."
exactly.
Yeah,
I hate that guy so much. I hate Yoss so much.
yeah.
But yeah, he's right. And like I know for Max, it's not really he really has nowhere he could really go to achieve the same success.
Mm,
And I think Max also likes at least the pillars that are still standing at Red Bull. He
mm,
likes them a lot. Uh so I know for him, he's just kind of like, at least for the rest of the season, it's like, yeah, this is what I got. Um, so I think for him, he's just trying to prove or trying to get the most out of it before it completely falls over. And
mm,
that's why I think this race came to a head for
mm,
everything. I think it's finally the torch is finally passing in
mm.
terms of the best team. Um, and that's hard for Max to accept, I think. It's and for Red Bull too.
I think it's harder for Red Bull to accept than for Max. I feel like because obviously like Max wants to win, and so if he's
Hmm.
not winning, he's gonna be disappointed. But
Hmm.
kind of the question I was about to bring up is like if the ship does sink, do you think Max will stay in the sport, or will he finally just say, you know what, let me go do something different now? Because he hasn't really shown like he's interested in going from another team. From like some short articles that I've read, it seemed like he's very much said like, no, I'm still gonna stay at Red Bull for now. Um,
Yeah, I think he'll stay to the end of his contract. I think he'll see, unless the new cars are a complete disaster.
mm,
That's the only reason I would think that he would want to retire early.
mm,
You would be a fool to suggest that next year Red Bull won't still be in the hunt for number one in the constructors
mm.
or fighting for
Well,
wins.
I don't
You'd
know
be a
about
fool to suggest.
constructors with Paris, but we'll talk about Paris later.
Maybe, yeah, we'll talk about Paris later. You're right, but what I mean is, to be a fast car,
Mm,
you'd be a fool to suggest otherwise.
mm,
So, yeah, of course he'll stay next year. And 2026, it's possible that he loves the team so much that he probably wants to stay and tries. Also probably curious about how the new cars are going to be, a new Red Bull power unit, all these different things that I think he would probably love to stick around and support.
mm,
But then, yeah, I have a feeling that, yeah, he would just retire. I don't think he would try to go to another team.
mm,
Uh, I can't think. Maybe I don't know what would light a fire under him, but that would be the only reason why he would resign with another team or
mm.
resign with Red Bull.
Yeah. I will say though, something that I've really been enjoying about this season, not even just the races themselves, but obviously after 2023, seeing Max dominate the way he did, and obviously we always knew and we always talked about like, yo, yes, the car is good, but Max is also like very, very good. It's been really, really entertaining this season, seeing Max like having to put in that like bit extra work to squeeze out the win, like Barcelona. Well, okay, not
Mhm,
Austria because of the crash, but Barcelona specifically, like knowing that, yeah, he did not have the faster car that weekend, but he like very much made the difference. And also Red Bull
mhm,
like still keeping like having good
mhm.
strategy, having good pit stops, showing that okay, look, even if we're not dominating like crazy, like we still are like that team. So I thought that that's been really fun for me to watch.
Oh, 100%. I mean, let's break it down, right? I mean, so let's go to Canada.
Mm,
Canada, Norris risked it by staying out longer, and he was undercut. To be 100% like honest, he was
yeah.
undercut when the final stint switched over.
Hmm.
I think it was from was it from dries to inters or inters to dries or just whatever. Like
I think it
when
was
Norris
interested
stayed
dries.
out
Yeah.
because Norris stayed out like 2 laps longer, right?
Hmm.
And, when I was watching it, I knew that he really didn't have much of a choice because I think Max was in front before that, right?
Hmm.
So, it was that or just follow the leader, and that's not a guarantee of victory, right?
Yeah.
So, they had to try something, but it still showed that, like, Max was in that position and took full advantage of it, to
Hmm.
undercut Norris. And then in Spain, um Red Bull, you're 100% right. I think they had like a 2.1 pit stop and a 2.3 pit stop or something in Spain. They had like a really dialed weekend in terms of pit
Hmm.
stops for both him and Perez. And because of that, the gap at the end was only like 2 seconds or within 2 seconds between
Yeah.
him and Norris. That's all the difference because for Norris, I think it was a 3.6 and a 3.3 or something for his
Mm.
pit stops. And that clearly, like that's if that's a like about a second or 2 seconds, right?
Mm.
Um, that could have been shaved away from pit stops. I mean, oh my gosh, there's the race, right? He could have been in
Yeah.
DRS within a lap. There are so many things you can point at the last a few weekends that, yeah, if McLaren had been on the exact same level as Red Bull, or
Mm.
if Lando had been on the exact level as Max in these very small details, we definitely could have Lando winning the past 3 races.
Yeah.
Um, I think in Austria, the what we saw was kind of a reminder that Max is still the best driver. As much as I love Lando,
Mm.
um, and I regardless of the incident, Max's performance in a car that was not the fastest that weekend, as we clearly saw, I would even argue that the Red Bull is actually on average probably slower than even the Mercedes. It
Really?
just it really depends on how you look at the data.
Mm.
But, I watched a great video with, a guy named Peter Windsor, and he was looking at the data, specifically at the end of sector 2. So if
Mm.
you can picture the Red Bull Ring,
Yeah.
there's the downhill, windy section where, um, the downhill left-hander
Yeah,
and
the
quick right.
downhill left with the sand pit on the right. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, and then those are the last 2 corners before the final 2 downhill right-handers that lead
Yeah.
you onto the front
Yeah.
straight. So, that area is pivotal because if you can carry more speed on that downhill and the momentum from coming from uphill, then you can carry that speed further, right, and get
Mm.
yourself time. And in Austria, it's one of the shortest laps, in the entire, season, right?
Yeah.
And that's very, very important. And he was able to be in 7th gear when everyone else was in 6th gear coming
Wow.
out of that corner. And that is a big deal when you're talking about the best drivers in the world.
Mm.
And that's how he was able to find 2, 3, 4 tenths on guys. It just shows you Max's skill, right, in the car and the ability to kind of dance with the car to
Mm.
shift his weight left to right. And that's what all that corner is all about.
Mm.
The only driver who even got close was Hamilton. And even he was still stuck in 6th.
Yeah.
So it's like I think this weekend it's still a reminder that as much as we can say that McLaren is the fastest car, Max is still the best driver. And we said this at the beginning of the year, and he's still going to be the best driver at the end of the season.
Mm.
He's still the best. He's still the benchmark for all the drivers.
Mm. So I haven't looked at like a lot of the data or like a lot of the analysis myself, but I guess how big of a gap is it between Red Bull and McLaren? Because I know Spain for sure, McLaren had the faster car, but I didn't know that it was that big of a difference in Austria. Because at least when
So I
I
don't
was
know
watching the
the
race, it seemed like they were. My opinion would have been that they were like on par. I wouldn't have outright said that the McLaren was faster, but I wasn't fully sure.
I think the main thing from Austria that I remember from the data was that the Mercedes and the Red Bulls were the fastest on the straights. So it
Mm.
clearly showed that the Red Bulls trimmed out their car
Mm.
to be faster on those straights, right? Whereas McLaren was the slowest on the straights compared to on the 4 fastest. So
Mm.
whenever I look at the data, it's usually between Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes,
Mm.
right? Those 4 teams. And McLaren was the slowest of the 3, or sorry, of the 4 on the straights,
Mm.
which meant that they kind of tuned up their car to be faster in sector 2, right? In
Yeah.
like the more downforce area. And they were still able to keep up with, like, it wasn't a big enough difference in that uh, in the
In the
straights,
straights, yeah.
right? It wasn't a big enough deficit to like make up the difference.
Mm.
Um, or sorry, to for Red Bull to like just like have a huge advantage on the straights.
Yeah.
So I would say that the strengths of the McLaren right now, they clearly think that straight line speed is not an issue.
Mm,
They think that for them to trim their car more towards downforce is one of two things. It's either at that track, their data shows that Lando likes that or Piastri likes that, right? Or two, they have the data from their car to suggest that they can sacrifice a little bit, right? And
mm,
they'll still be relative on the straight line. And that they can try to get an advantage and steamroll an advantage in the downforce sections.
mm.
Either way is possible. My theory is a little bit of both
Okay.
because Lando does like this track,
Mm,
and so I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted a little more downforce, especially in the braking zones.
yeah. Nah, Silverstone is gonna be very interesting then based off that.
Yeah. So let's of those four teams, it's always
Mm,
interesting to talk about. One of my favorite parts of the season so far is what team is going to come out swinging, right? And
mm,
obviously McLaren has had the fastest car on average, but we've had great surprises in Canada,
mm.
right? Mercedes finally stepped up to the plate. For Christ's sake, it's taken them this freaking long, and Canada was fantastic. They had a great performance,
Yeah.
and they seem to have figured out the balance of their car.
Mm,
It is not on par in terms of like actual raw pace
mm,
with the Red Bull and the McLaren yet. But
yeah.
Hamilton and Russell are good enough drivers, or they're putting themselves in the mix.
Mm,
So, do you think at Silverstone this weekend, do you think that's going to be similar in terms of Mercedes will still be above Ferrari? It seems like, which is crazy to suggest.
yeah. Well, so that's actually what I was gonna say. I was gonna say that it seems like Mercedes have finally like confidently overstepped Ferrari right now.
Hmm.
Do I think they're gonna be on par with McLaren and Red Bull? No, I don't think so. Because I think they've been making very good progress this season, but I still think it has been kind of slow and gradual. Like I feel like McLaren's progress was a bit more pronounced. Like I forget which race was it where they really came out and there was just like, well, because I mean Miami he got the win like with the help of the safety car, but I think it was after
China.
Miami.
It was probably
Probably
it's
China,
probably
you
like
think?
China. China was, I
Mm,
think, the when Norris got sprint pole, if you
mm,
remember, that it was like, okay, McLaren is starting to figure out their car this year.
mm,
And then Miami, Norris won with arguably the second fastest car. I
mm,
don't think he won with the fastest car that weekend.
mm.
But then Imola was the first time it was like, oh shit, that McLaren
Yeah,
actually is
exactly,
pretty
exactly.
fast.
But I feel like with Mercedes, it has just been a bit more gradual, and it's been also
Yeah.
really the drivers, just kind of like really putting in the work needed to like make sure they're getting the results.
Mhm.
So that's why I do think because I really don't know exactly what's going on with Ferrari right now, but yeah, Ferrari right now are just absolutely losing the development battle. So going into
Mhm.
Silverstone, I would think that it would probably stack up McLaren and Red Bull on par. The Mercedes will be right there. Like probably, I'm pretty confident. I think they'll get a podium. You'll probably have Russell and Piastri probably fighting for that last podium spot, and then
Mhm.
Ferrari will just be like right behind them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a pretty safe bet. Um, I think McLaren will become. I think they'll bring most the rest of their upgrades this weekend,
Mm,
barring that none of it was too damaged after Austria.
mm,
But I don't think. I think it was just a front wing in Austria, and I don't think the front wing was the part that was damaged on that car.
oh.
Um, and yeah, let's
You're
see
talking
what
about
they do.
Science car, right?
No, I was talking about the Norris's car. Like after the incident
Oh,
that
the
happened, right?
McLaren car.
The
Yeah, yeah,
damage,
yeah. Oh, I thought you said
obviously
Ferrari. My bad.
with less than a week before this new race, right?
Mm,
Like the obviously always the big scare, the fear is that holy shit, we brought upgrades this weekend and they just got trashed,
mm,
right? So I don't think they were. I think they only brought some small upgrades in like the front wing,
mm.
and I don't think the front wing was affected in the
Yeah,
incident.
I'm pretty sure most of the damage was just the floor and then probably like the engine cover
Yeah.
area, probably some like maybe like the beam wing a little bit too. But no, I think the front wing was fun.
So I think if they bring like side pod upgrades, engine cover upgrades, floor upgrades to Silverstone, it might just be convenient now that like okay, well the old one was fucked anyway.
Mm.
But it could mean that if something happens during practice, right, which there might be rain, like majority of rain during practice, that could be a problem. So let's just hope Lando doesn't put it into the gravel or something.
Yeah, yeah. All right, moving on. What do you want to discuss? Do you want to talk about Ricardo or do you want to talk about I want to talk about Hamilton and Russell a little bit and kind of Mercedes in
Let's do it.
general. So like we
Let's
just
do it.
said, they've made considerable, progress this season. Um, I know a lot of people already, have been, making comments on how well, basically saying, that Russell is outperforming. Well, there was that one post you saw where they were trying to say Russell is outperforming Norris. That's not true. But he
No.
is kind of outperforming Hamilton this season. And we did kind of talk about it, I think, at the very beginning of the season, where it definitely does seem like part of that could be, since Lewis is leaving, that they're really focusing on Russell a lot more in terms of getting his feedback on how they're going to be changing the car and how they're going to be setting it up. Because I
Mhm.
really think it comes down to even Hamilton's, I mean, Hamilton's been like really hard on himself, but I think he also knows that it's really just he is not comfortable a lot of the times when he's driving the car, and so he really
Mhm.
can't extract much out of it. And that's why we see like Russell pretty consistently out qualifies him, but Hamilton always manages to, like, he still has good races. Like, even if Russell beats him, he's usually still like right behind him and right there. And he has had races like because he got the podium in Spain, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, Hamilton got the podium,
yeah,
yeah.
so he did show at least that if he does get comfortable in the car, like, he very much can put in the performance and even outperform Russell.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I don't know, I guess it's curious to, because he's also, I guess, been happier with the upgrades because the car is generally faster. But I'm curious to see if, as they continue to develop more, if maybe they'll start to consider a bit more input from Hamilton, and maybe he'll start to get more comfortable, and we'll start seeing him be a lot more on par with Russell. If not, then Russell is just gonna continue to kind of be the faster driver on the team right now.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't really have a solidified idea yet of how the rest of the
Mhm.
season's going to go for them. I'll just stand by that. Yeah, I think for Hamilton, he shouldn't feel like offended that like they're gonna ask Russell more questions about how to develop the
Yeah.
car. It's only reasonable, and now we're almost halfway through the season, right?
Mm.
I come on. I mean, this was going to happen, and Hamilton knows exactly what he was doing when he signed at the beginning of the season. Or before the season even started,
Yeah.
he knew it was going to happen.
Mm.
So I don't like some of these articles that try to suggest that like this is taking him by surprise. No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not. Like
Or trying to say that Mercedes is sabotaging him.
that was ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
we
was
can talk
just
about that really quick. There
people
were
were
several
taking
articles.
that a little too seriously. Like, at first I thought it was just like, like, meme joke, whatever. But then I
Mhm.
people seemed to be taking it really seriously, and I was like, come on, guys.
Well, to be fair, Hamilton made some suggestions himself after Monaco, I think,
Mm.
where he was like, well, Russell got the new front wing and I didn't, and it's like, okay, all right.
Yeah, you're kind of leaving, bro.
They, not just that, they revealed later that they offered it to Hamilton. I think it
Mm.
was either Toto or someone high up in Mercedes. Like, no, we offered it to him and he
Oh, and he didn't
refused. He
want
didn't
it.
want it.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, like, dude,
Yeah.
you can't have it both ways. Come on,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that makes sense to me hearing that from Mercedes because last year there was a lot of talk about how Hamilton was frustrated about being the guinea pig.
Mm.
In 2022 as well, that there were
Yeah. When
times
that
where
that was
Hamilton
like
would get
voluntary sabotage.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's obviously the risk reward thing where I think Hamilton was like, "I'm the senior in the team, let me take the burden." But
Hmm.
also in the back of his head thinking, "If these upgrades actually work, right, I'm gonna get the benefit other than my teammate." And it's not Hamilton's fault that in reality, Mercedes had no idea what the hell they were doing in 2022,
Yeah.
right? And only like 25% knew what they were doing last year.
Mm.
So, yeah, of course, Russell on paper then ends up looking like a beast. Um, but hey, that's how it goes. Hamilton
Yeah.
should know that. That's why all this stuff that I'm saying, right? The biggest frustration is, dude, we're talking to the second most experienced driver on the grid. What are you? Why are you surprised?
Yeah.
You should be acting like this is another day, like in on the grid. This
Yeah.
isn't. You're going to Ferrari, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I know,
Come on, man.
especially Kanda, when they finally went to dries and Russell went
Mhm,
on the mediums, and then they
mhm,
put Hamilton on the hards when I think he had won the mediums also. Even like
mhm.
even as I was watching that, I was frustrated, but even I'm not gonna say like, oh, I don't think that was intentional sabotage. That actually
No,
maybe
I
might
thought
come down to it was a bad strategy call, like, from his side of the garage or from his race engineer, or maybe they didn't want to put him on a used set of mediums, so they put him on a fresh set of hards. I don't even know.
I think it
I
was
do agree
that.
that was a bad strategy call, and that very much was the reason that he had no shot of staying ahead of Russell. But
I think it was
I
what I think it was what you said.
mm,
I think it was they only had worn mediums.
okay, yeah.
I don't think they had a fresh set of mediums set to go.
Mm,
And I think they also probably had data suggesting that, like, look, it's better than nothing. Let's get him
yeah.
on these hards. Um, And yeah, it just didn't work out. But like
Yeah.
that's how
But then
racing
also
works.
going into what I was saying of if Russell just this whole season, because to be honest, I don't think I've seen a single like article or like even anything about Russell. I'm sure he has like a little bit, but he's not complaining about the car the way Hamilton is. And so even like during that Canada race, like he got pole and once they put on the dries, even though yeah he was on the mediums, but I feel like it's pretty easy to say that he was kind of the faster driver that weekend. So
Mhm.
even if like I think even if Hamilton was like on the mediums too, I think Russell probably would have still overtaken him eventually, especially if they're letting him fight and he was behind, he had DRS. Like it's just
Mhm.
kind of how it goes. It's a little, yeah, like even for me as a Lewis fan and as a Mercedes fan, it's a little upsetting to see, but I'm not gonna go as far to say like, oh, they're sabotaging the guy's car.
Hell no, hell no. It's unreasonable to go that far.
Mm.
Yeah. So let's talk about so that's Mercedes. You want to talk about Perez?
Yes, this is everyone's daily reminder that even after Max got a puncture and a 10-second penalty, he still finished in front of Perez at Austria. Yes, Perez did have a bit of damage on his car apparently, but even if we take Austria out of the equation, just look at the past, like however many race results, it's actually ridiculous. Yes, we're talking about, okay, yeah, McLaren is faster than Red Bull. Now, Red Bull is still clearly faster than Ferrari and Mercedes. So why are all of their drivers consistently finishing in front of Perez? Why is Perez not making it into Q3 sometimes when Haas's are making it into Q3? Yo, Alpines are making it into Q3s now. And Perez sometimes isn't making it into Q3. Think about that.
No.
That's insane. That's
Mhm.
absolutely ridiculous.
No, it's absolute insanity. I
And
don't know how
extended
this guy
contracts.
gets worse. Yeah, I don't know how this guy gets worse after his contract is extended. Like, I guess you could say like, oh, well, he can just relax now. Like, aren't you supposed to be better when you're relaxed? Like, I thought this is like this dude Perez is like the third most experienced
Mm.
driver on the grid, right? And you would like obviously no one's expecting him to be as good as Max, but
Bro,
dude,
get a podium.
this is
Get a podium, please.
dude. Like, dude, like it's at the point now where like if we listed off our top 10 drivers, I don't even think he comes to mind. Like I don't
No,
know if
he's not
he
top
ends
10.
up
He's
making
not
the
top
cut.
10. He's not
Yeah.
top 10. No.
So why is a guy that is not in the top 10 drivers in the consistently like on average best car, if not second best car? What
So what
what,
I think it
what
is,
are we doing?
well, one also you had mentioned earlier that it seemed like Helmut Marko is being shunned a little bit at Red Bull.
Hmm.
If we're being real,
Hmm.
like if there's a guy that's gonna be like, yo, get out of my car right now, it would be Helmet. But
Hmm.
even like taking that out of the equation, like my opinion on what it is from Red Bull's perspective, it's still that they really don't want someone to challenge Max. And even that's like questionable to me because it's like, do you not still care about the constructor's title? Because the way it's going right now, you are not going to win the constructor's title like, as a team. Like, as much as yes,
Yep.
you want to support your driver, you want to support their driver's championship, you really need to care about the constructors too. And y'all are not going to win the constructor's title this season with the way this is
No.
going. And so, with seeing, maybe in the past I defended Perez a bit because he actually was being a good number two driver, like in 2022 and
Hmm.
2023. All of that has gone away now. So, even if you're thinking, yes, you don't want someone that's going to challenge Max, like if you brought in someone like Norris or say Ricardo, well, I don't think Ricardo is going to have the skill right now to challenge Max really. But if you brought someone like Yuki for sure is trying to prove himself, and every single
Hmm.
weekend, the only thing on his mind is I have to beat Max right now. I can understand like not wanting to have that, but it's just I feel like as a team maybe I'm wrong to make this call, but I feel like it's better to risk that, even though I don't think it's really a risk having two really good drivers on your team. I think it's better to risk that than to just like have this guy that is just like consistently underperforming. Like it's actually embarrassing. It's been embarrassing. It's not even at this point. It's been embarrassing every single time that it happens. And
Hmm.
there's been like no I haven't heard anything from Horner or anyone else on Red Bull kind of like really criticizing or like properly commenting on this. I haven't heard anything from Perez properly like, being hard on himself saying like, oh, I need to improve every single weekend. It's just, like, oh, no, the most frustrating thing is how much he fucking complains when he like well, it's very much his fault. Like, yeah, sometimes stuff can happen, but I think the times when he didn't make Q3 and stuff like that, he'd be like literally yelling on his radio. He'd come back in their video, he'd be like, yeah, it was a shit race, shit situation, yada yada yada. And I'm like, no, bro, you're just bad. Like, come on. Like, who are you? There's no one to
Uh,
blame but you.
he was eliminated in Q1 at Canada, right?
I don't even remember,
That's like
bro.
the one I'm thinking of. I think that he was eliminated, and then he banged on his steering wheel.
I think it was
It's
that. I
like
think might have been that one. Yeah. And I'm
it's like,
like,
buddy, you gotta look in the mirror, dude.
if you were
I
actually upset, you get better. I'm not seeing you get better.
yeah, and so this is the thing we talked at the beginning we were talking about, right? Is like I don't really blame Perez in terms of like he keeps getting confirmation for being mediocre. The dude keeps getting contract extensions. He's not getting any in 2021, I remember there actually being some he's got to step it up. He's got to do
Hmm.
this, he's got to do that. 2022, like he's got to step it up. He's got to do this, he's got to do that. And those were his better Red Bull years. I think 2021 and 2022 were his better ones. And now these last
No,
two
I agree.
seasons
I
have
fully
been
agree. Yeah,
now suddenly the criticism disappears and now it's this.
that's what I'm saying. It's like nothing from Red Bull. There's no longer that, oh, you
Nothing.
need to set up. It's just, here's a contract, bro. Just keep doing what you're doing.
So yeah, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to keep tumbling. And as the car relative to everybody else is going to keep getting worse and worse, because I think we can argue that on a relative scale of all the cars, Red
Hmm.
Bull's on a downtrend. It's one of the few cars that are on a downtrend. Um, Fucking Alpine has had a better development pattern, right, this
Hmm.
season than fucking Red Bull.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I know we like to like hate on Alpine a lot, but like I'm honestly
hey,
like shout out to them. The improvement
yeah,
they've been making so far this season, incredible.
yeah,
They started out this season like definitively the absolute worst car on the grid, and they're getting into Q3 now and scoring points. Good for them.
agreed, agreed. Yeah, and despite all the issues they've been having, fucking bringing back Flavio, um, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
forgot
they
about that.
still
I'm not
made
gonna lie.
yeah, it's fucking Briatore. I, we can talk about that, but honestly,
No,
I
no,
don't
we
have
don't need to
many
talk about that.
constructive words
Yeah,
for
no,
that.
let's move on from
Um,
that.
but yes, I will say constructively, fantastic.
Hmm.
Trying to turn it around in such a competitive grid. Like, are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
yeah,
Austria actually had the closest gap in Q1 from P1 to P20 of any race in F1 history
yeah.
and of any qualifying session in F1
Wasn't it less than
history.
a second too? It was like point
It
0.7, right?
was 0.78 or something.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's I think I texted you and I was like, this for people who think that it isn't competitive or that it hasn't been competitive the past couple years, like it's felt that way for
Mm,
the past 2 years of everyone other than Max Verstappen.
yeah.
It has felt like this grid is cutthroat and completely just anyone's game,
Mm,
right? Fucking the Haas's this weekend did a fantastic job. Like
yeah.
shout out to them, right?
Hasselman having a
But
fantastic year, but
who would have thought that?
yeah,
Who would have like came into 2024 at the beginning when everything was happening and they switched team principals, right? They fired Gunther and everything. And who would have said like, "Oh yeah, they're actually probably going to have their best season in like 3 years."
yeah,
You would have been like, "You're crazy. That's not going to happen." Um yeah, it's crazy shit has happened. I think a lot of teams have also been what's the word I'm looking for? I guess like kind of I I can't think of the saying, but, like, Williams has been disappointing. I think they really gambled a lot with trying to rebuild everything on the team, and they are paying for it
mm.
because I think that car was half-assed. I think that car, they didn't do enough with it
Like
because
you
they were
mean they were
putting all the
putting a lot
resources.
more, yeah, a lot more resources into just building the team than developing the car.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think it's,
So
I feel like you can't blame them for that though, because like, how are you gonna build a good car without a proper foundation to like really develop it on? You get what I mean?
true, true. Ultimately, it's gonna be for the best,
Mm,
right? But I do think, right, that I don't imagine he is Val's is best friends with the investors right now,
mm.
with
Oh,
the
for
board of
sure. Yeah,
directors,
yeah.
right? And he's certainly not best friends with Logan Sargent right now,
Mm,
because Sargent ultimately is the biggest loser of that whole thing.
mm,
That if they had gotten a car that was on the same level it was last year and had made like a small improvement the way that everyone else did,
mm.
right? Relative, um, Logan would be kind of like 11th or 12th, right? Like much better than right. And
Yeah.
Albon would also probably be a top 10 scorer every race,
Mm,
but that's not the case.
yeah.
Instead, both of them are stuck down there, right?
Mm. No, it's actually I forgot what I was gonna add.
No, you're good.
No, I agree with you, and kind of with the grid, like being as close as is it is going back to Perez. Like if some people want to say that, oh, okay, yeah, that's why he's not as high up as he is because all the cars are like really close in performance, and that's just a testament to how poor of a driver he is. Because
Yes.
regardless, like, I mean, yes, the grid is close, but Red Bull is still the second fastest car, and
Hmm.
he should still be, you're at a top team, you should be performing at a high level. I think it's fair to say that you should at least be, out qualifying, the Ferraris and the Mercedes like every single weekend. If he's
Hmm.
getting beat by the McLarens, then I'll be like, all right, yeah, like fair enough. Then they're just better than you. But right now, pretty much everyone is better than him.
It's the fourth year at that team.
Yeah.
He should be entering every weekend with his experience going, this is the setup I want, right? And like we're gonna dial it in after FP1 and do
Mm,
long runs in FP2 and FP3. And like it basically like we're gonna get this race pace exactly down.
mm,
Obviously, look, I'm not an F1 race engineer and I'm not an F1 driver. I'm not going to pretend that I know what it's like on that level, but I have to imagine that a guy with his experience can reach the conclusions of like this is where I set up the setup I want to be, this is the tire data that I want to see, right?
mm.
All this stuff, he should be able to reach it faster than someone like Piastri. And
Yeah.
if he doesn't, he's washed. That that's the only thing experience. That's what it provides. If you can't even give that, dude, your raw pace is not enough to make up for that.
Yeah.
And that is what we're seeing. I think that's what we're is that he's just not. It's just not there
Especially for a
anymore.
driver like him, where even like at his peak, like obviously, yes, he was a good driver, but he was never like, he was never the driver
No,
you thought about when you're thinking of just ridiculous, raw pace. So the only thing he
no.
really does have to carry him is, his experience, his tire management, his
Mhm.
like race management, stuff like that. But he's not even doing that stuff well right now. So then it's like, what's the case? I was also
Nope.
gonna mention, um, everyone, he's always had the title, Mexican Minister of Defense or whatever, because he's really good at defending. He has never been good at overtaking. I feel like no one has talked about that. Because
Yeah.
even from those previous seasons when he was defending really, really well, I'm thinking back to like 2022 and 2023 when he had situations where he qualified really low and he was trying to fight back up the field. There was I can't bring up the specifics, I don't remember exactly, but there was several instances where you could tell that he was just desperate to overtake someone and he would just make a really stupid lunge and then they'd make contact, he'd get damaged or the other driver would get damaged. And
Mhm.
he's done that pretty consistently, and I you still see glimpses of that now, and I'm sure it's going to happen again in the future because eventually maybe halfway through the
Yeah.
season people will start to really complain to Red Bull, and then he'll like panic and say, oh, okay, I need to like get past this summon, and then boom, he's going to make a lunge and crash out of the race.
I completely agree. I don't think he's good at overtaking at all. I don't think that's ever been his strength.
Yeah.
I don't think he's even good relative to anyone who's in the top 10,
Mm,
like in terms of overtaking. Yeah, he's
tragic.
but it's too late now. They already gave him the extension.
Mm,
And now I think it's
that's
just
so
another
insane.
domino in this story about how Red Bull is now kind of fumbling.
Mm. I feel
I
like just okay, so yeah, them extending Perez's contract was a very poor decision. And then if
Mhm.
we go down, their junior team, we're talking about the V Carbs. They've also still, I mean, I don't think they've extended Ricardo's contract, but they
No,
haven't
they haven't. It's
dropped
open.
Ricardo yet. And
Mm-mm.
yes, after he had the whole, oh, hey, I need a new chassis, he got a new chassis. He has been performing a lot better. He's been scoring more points. He's a lot more closer to Yuki, but he's still not like definitively beating Yuki. And if you think about who was the person that made that comment, I know you said
Jacques
to me,
Villeneuve,
yeah,
the
Jacques Villeneuve.
1997 champion.
Yeah, he made a comment about why are people giving Ricardo this kind of special treatment? Like this guy, like yes,
Mhm.
he's won Grand Prix, but this guy is not a world champion. Like he's had experience, but he's like even at his peak, he was never even like probably a top three driver. Like at his peak, he was beating. Well, didn't he beat Vettel when he
So
first
he
came
did
to
beat
Red
Vettel
Bull?
in
Yeah.
2014, right? In a completely new car and everything like that. I think it was
Mm,
very similar to how Russell beat Hamilton.
mm,
There's no way, like, with just that season, you would say that, like, Russell's better than Hamilton,
mm.
right? You have to look at the whole picture.
No,
But
exactly.
it's very similar to that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was gonna say like that was his
Uh,
peak, and then after that he
yeah.
was at best on par with Max Verstappen, and then after that he's just kind of been going downhill. Like yeah, okay, he did a solid job when he was at Renault. Um,
Not even, an experienced Max, a young
yeah,
Max
yeah, a young
with
Max.
no, like yeah, with, like, no calm, no poise,
Mm,
right? The Max that we see now leagues better than
Mm.
2018 Max, right? And even then, it was really tight between them, right?
No, exactly.
Ricardo, I think, was definitely at his best in those like in 2016, 2017, 2018 Red Bull days.
Mm.
And no, I don't think I think his best, and I will say that there was a season I think he got in second in the drivers' championship,
Mm.
but even then, I don't think he was better than like Leclerc in 22. I know that might be confusing to say, but what I mean by that is he is not better, in my opinion,
Mm.
right, to deserve another opportunity, right,
Mm.
at the top seat.
No, no,
And
exactly.
if that's not the discussion, and we
Mm.
both agree that's not really in the discussion anymore, what is he doing here?
Exactly, exactly. And that was like Jacques Villeneuve's comments exactly is he hasn't shown anything that to say that he deserves to like constantly keep getting like second chances. He should have been out of the sport like after McLaren dropped him. It's still kind of ridiculous. I mean even I was kind of like hyping him up a bit like once VCarb
Mhm.
decided to take him up again. But then he got here and he hasn't done anything significant. So at this
Mhm.
point, get rid of him. You have Liam Lawson. We've had this conversation so many times. There is
Yeah.
so many new drivers you can bring into this grid, or even if you don't bring in a new
Mhm.
driver, just shuffle the grid around. Like, come
Mhm.
on.
More every year too. More
Hmm.
every year. Theo Pourchaire
Exactly.
is now probably not gonna get a shot. No one even remembers who Felipe Dragovich is.
Hmm.
Um, it's kinda sad that,
Yeah.
like, F2 is not really a feeder series anymore.
Hmm. I
Um,
was trying to
I
think
love
about it. Oh, sorry. You can finish your thought.
I was gonna say I love Nico Hulkenberg, but, I mean, when he was hired to Haas instead of a young driver, you kinda realize, like, okay, things are different now. Things are
Hmm.
just
No, yeah, he's been their better driver since they got him, and he's been getting them
that's
results.
been the exception, though, is my point is that, I I just feel like the Ricardo thing was simply for marketing,
Hmm.
and for Horner kind of having his own, like, kind of personal not vendetta, but his personal, like, um, I guess, just satisfaction,
No, I think
right?
Vendetta is accurate. Like Vendetta just to prove like, hey, I'm still the
Yeah.
boss. Like we're gonna do what I want to do.
Yeah, he really loves Ricardo. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone will say otherwise, right? But, yeah, I
Please
I think
still let him
he's
go though.
been 'cause I think he hasn't been the one who's been vocally negative about him since everything's happened. I think it's really only been Marco and the
Mm.
media. Um, and yeah, so the 2 constants in the Formula 1 media and Sky Sports F1 and all those guys, there's 2 constants that you will always see, that they will endlessly support Hamilton and they will endlessly support Ricardo. Um, and that's why Jacques Villeneuve, when he was talking to them, they all kinda went, "Oh, how could you say that?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, even people afterwards were just like, That's ridiculous. His 2019 and 2020, seasons at Renault were fantastic." They weren't
Mm.
fantastic. He was good, but he wasn't like, come on now.
Yeah.
Let's be real here. Um, yeah, once
Like
again,
yeah,
just
he
getting
he
back to
he
the
got he
point.
got the one like podium at Renault, and wasn't his teammate Ocon at Renault, and so okay, like
Are
oh
you
I
gonna
think he was
tell me that
teammates with Hulkenberg
Ricardo
at one point too,
are you gonna
but
tell me Ricardo is better than Alex Albon? Like, are you gonna tell me he's
not
better
right
right
now.
now than, like,
Not right now.
clearly not being better than Yuki Tsunoda? This shouldn't be a conversation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, 100% agree. I was gonna say like in the conversation of F2 being a feeder series and also just I guess driver changes in F1. I was trying to think back to kind of previous years because I've been like going back and like rewatching some of the older seasons, and I felt like every single season, from like let's say like 2009, I'm like watching 2013 right now. I feel like there's always kind of like a rookie on the grid. Maybe like I haven't looked at it closely and actually analyzed it, but I feel like there's always like a couple new drivers. I know also that time they had more teams. There was like 11 teams or 1.12 teams, so that opens up a bit more room. But I just felt like there was a bit more like rotation going around. You actually had like more new drivers coming in. Um, but I feel like when was the last time we got like a proper rookie? I guess other than Logan Sargent.
Piastri.
Okay, yeah, and then we go. Okay, I'm gonna forget about Piastri.
Yeah,
Piastri's just good. I forget he's a
he
rookie. I'm
passed
not
just
gonna
he's
lie.
not he wasn't a rookie.
Yeah.
When that's but the amount of testing that dude did,
Mm.
yes, on paper he was a rookie, but no, that dude was ready to
Hmm.
play from the moment they set him on the board.
Yeah.
And I think before that it was Joe in 2022,
Mm.
and Joe I think was a proper rookie, right? Where like
Mm.
he was okay. I think Joe is still just okay.
Mm.
Um, certainly not worthy of keeping around, rather than picking up a new junior
Mm.
driver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like
think, or
Behrman.
maybe it's not as much not rookies coming in, but maybe just a lot of the older guys like need to go. Like at this point, I'll confidently say Perez needs to go, Ricardo
Mhm,
needs to go. I still think
mhm,
Bottas needs to go.
mhm.
I don't see. I mean, Nico Hulkenberg like is good, but both the two of them, because haven't their contracts not been extended right now?
I think
At
Nico. Well,
least
Nico was
for
picked up by Sauber.
yeah, Nico got picked up by
Yeah.
Sauber, but Kevin, right? Like
So
Kevin
he's a
seems like
yeah.
he might get dropped.
Yeah, he's not.
But
Yeah,
which
he's getting
and
dropped.
like I like Kevin. I think he's been like doing well enough this season, but it's still just kind of like y'all got to move on. We got to bring people in.
Mhm.
Alonso, I love you. I think you got to go pretty soon, bro. Because it's like
He
I
just
do.
signed like a long-term contract too. That's
No,
that's
no,
really sad to
I know,
say.
I know, but it's like because the exception with him, as opposed to say Perez, is his experience
Mhm.
actually shows. If you give him a good car, he's gonna give you results. Like the reason he's
Yes.
doing bad right now is because Aston Martin's midseason development is
Mhm.
abysmal, and so
It's
that's just
oh
like
my
there's
god.
only so much he can do. But even with that, like he's also been here for so long, and I also just like, and I understand that F1 is the top of the top, but it's like once you've especially for someone like Alonso, like maybe at one point you were still chasing another world championship, but
Mhm,
I feel like right now if it doesn't seem like it's like going to be possible in the near future, it's like you can still leave F1 and like still go race, like go to like I love seeing F1 drivers in like WEC or even
mhm,
IndyCar or anything like that. Like
mhm,
there's other places you can go to, like just
mhm.
leave, bring some new people in.
Alonso's had such a great career. I
Yeah.
don't disagree that like maybe you should leave. Yeah, if you're not chasing that championship, maybe it's time.
Hmm.
I agree with that. I think the excuse that I've been kind of making for him is that well, relatively he's still like one of the better drivers on the grid, right?
Hmm.
And I would still say so, but clearly this season is showing that like when he's not given a car that's like good, oy, I mean
Well, but it's also like the car is like
he
really
leaves.
not good. Like that's the thing.
Well, so it maybe is really just not that good,
Mm.
right? But Yuki in the AlphaTauri last year, which I think we can both agree was worse than whatever the Aston Martin is right now,
Yeah,
was still putting impressive drives in.
that's true.
I don't think what we could say right now, what Alonso's doing, is impressive.
Impressive, yeah.
It's you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
especially
think there's
I
plenty of
agree with you. The
drivers.
past couple of races, because I think the first couple races he was doing decent, but then
Yeah.
yeah, as kind of like the competition got tighter, he has not been having. He's just been having very very mediocre, just poor races in general.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same, you
Yeah.
know? And look, I'm like kind of a certified Yuki hyper now. I'm a hype man for him now. But yeah, I think it's just not uh the Alonso we saw like last year.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying he needs to be gone. He's the last person on both of our lists to be like, the people that were saying like old guys get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like he's the last one on that list for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Right? But you're still right though that like if that seat could have been filled by someone like Albon or
Hmm.
Yuki, I think I would have said, "Oh, 100% do that,"
Yeah.
rather than keep Alonso.
Yeah.
Obviously, the optimal solution would be get rid of fucking
I
Stroll.
was just about to say that goes without saying that Lance Stroll should have
It
been
goes without saying.
kicked
Goes
out of the
without
sport.
fucking saying, bro. Why is he here? Go play tennis. I don't know why he's here. God. And I think he made some sort of claim. I think it was after. Was it before China? Which is hilarious that it was before China.
Mm.
That like, so recently, like, I've been beating Alonso in these past like two races. I think we,
Impression is on
it's
point.
like, yes, his Canadian voice. I think someone asked him or something like, yeah, so you beaten like Alonso these past two races, like, what's that a signal of, or like, what does that
Mm.
represent, or what does that mean, right? He's like, well, I think it speaks for itself, and it's like, you're not him,
Bro,
dude.
I
I
hate
don't
his
know.
interviews so much. I don't know if you've noticed lately, like, I think maybe, previous seasons he'd actually kind of put an effort, but I swear to God, this season, bro is so done. Every single time he's just like, all right, it was what it was. We just
Yeah,
weren't fast.
it's not a great
He's trying to
weekend.
do the Kimmy thing, but he doesn't have the same. He's not Kimmy. He's not
No,
cold like that.
Kimmy
Yeah,
Yeah, Kimmy was cold.
yeah,
Kimmy could show up and not care and still put a top 10 performance in,
yeah,
and it's because that's how he operates. Lance genuinely doesn't care.
yeah.
He doesn't have the passion. He doesn't
There's no
there's no
passion.
passion,
There's
there's no
no
vision.
vision. There's no aggression.
Um, yeah, I thought it basically goes without saying on this
Yeah,
podcast, but we are certified Stroll haters, and we will be probably until that
all
dude
day, every
finally
day.
leaves. I guess he needs like an amputation or like heart surgery or something to just get an excuse to get
Bro,
this guy
like I
out of
don't
here.
understand. Like, bro, can he just not voluntarily leave? Like, is his dad like? Does his dad have like some crazy shit on him that is like, you're gonna drive for this team? Because if we're saying right now that he clearly does not care, why would he not leave? Do you get what I mean? Like, yes, obviously, okay,
Mhm.
yes, being a Formula One driver is like top three, top two coolest jobs you could have in the world.
Mhm.
Like, bro, you've had the job for years and you don't even like it. You've never been good at it. People don't like you. Like, come on, man. Come on. You don't even need the money. Your dad's a billionaire. You could go do whatever. Oh my God.
That's our I think our weekly
Yeah.
Stroll
Stroll
rant
rant.
out of the
Stroll
way.
rant.
It's out of our system. I feel good. I feel detoxed. Yeah, yeah.
Any other
I think the
topics you want to bring up?
the last thing I want to talk about
Mm,
is I think there are some warning signs for Ferrari.
mm,
So I Austin Martin is a perfect example of a team that seems to be really well funded and really well run back at the factory. It seems to be well managed. And I'm putting quotes and it'll make sense in a second. Um, but it seems like they just can't bring the results in terms of their development. Something is wrong with the data that they are pulling from their simulators. Something is wrong with the data they're pulling from the wind tunnels and all this stuff, right?
mm,
That they bring it to the track and it's just not working, right? And so that's an example of how like Mercedes felt, right?
mm,
That Mercedes felt like, holy shit, dude, we're one of the best teams in terms of data analysis, right? In the whole grid, but
mm,
this isn't working. The data isn't making sense to what we're actually getting on the
mm.
track. And so like, Austin is the best example of that, where like they are not improving. They
Mm,
are completely stagnant. In fact, someone took the timing from Q1, right,
mm.
to Fernando Alonso's Q3 time last year, and it was almost a second slower. Like their
Wow.
car was almost a second slower. Now, hold on. It's not quite that bad because Q1, as real
Mm.
like racers who know like how Q1, Q3 works, by the time Q3 comes along, there's so much rubber on the track that
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
like so fast, so much faster than Q1.
Mm.
But it is still really telling that
Has
it
no one
was
compared his
that
Q3
bad.
times then? Well, because I think he's
Well,
only
he
made
didn't make
Q3 times a
Q3.
couple times. Yeah.
I think he was knocked
Nah,
out in Q1.
no, no. I'm talking, no, not Austria, not Austria.
No, he's
I
talking about
just
something
meant
else.
like this season. I think he's made it into Q3. Yeah.
Ah, yeah, he did towards the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good example. Like when they came in the beginning of the season, they were looking relative, right? And kind of where we thought they would be,
Mm,
where they shit, they didn't make as much progress as Ferrari. Mercedes, we knew was starting with a completely new whiteboard, so we knew they were still like, their baseline was in the air,
mm,
and they were certainly going to be nowhere close to Red Bull,
mm.
right? But they ended up being like they've been falling down the order
Yeah.
because they aren't making any improvements. So I say that about Aston Martin because they're a good example of that. Ferrari needs to be careful. They brought upgrades to Imola and they brought upgrades to, I think, Spain.
Mm,
And both times we have not seen significant improvement. That is a concern. That means that the problem that Mercedes had could very well be the problem that Ferrari has. And that's not a good thing for long term
mm,
if your data is not lining up from back at the factory to on the track.
mm. Well, are you sure it's not also that maybe they did make a bit of an improvement, but it was just the teams around them? So, mainly McLaren, well, McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull, like all just made better gains with the development that they've been doing.
I think so it's a tough call. I think McLaren definitely is the odd man out in this case
Mm,
because you're right. I mean, so Red Bull brought upgrades, but they didn't really make significant improvement. But I think the explanation for Red Bull has been they've already hit the ceiling in terms of their design,
mm,
right? Whereas Ferrari started from scratch, Mercedes started from scratch, and McLaren is building off of a concept that they started from scratch last year, and so they're like actually starting to get to like a really good position now,
yeah.
right? And hitting their stride with their design.
Mm,
Um, but I still think that there might be a larger problem. I still think that like especially because they started from nothing, there should be a huge ceiling for this design, no? They should be finding loads of time, back at the factory from just continuing to develop, right?
Mm,
Because my thing is, if you start from scratch, right? When you start from scratch, it allows you to pick different avenues, right? And see and measure the potential of each of these avenues, and then pick that avenue based on its potential, right?
mm,
And weighing the pros and cons and stuff, right? So they wouldn't pick an avenue that didn't have potential the way the
yeah.
McLaren's does. There's no way. They would have to pick a potential that at least has like, oh, we can find a second after like a year of development throughout the season,
Mm,
right? Something like that. Obviously, that number is arbitrary. Um, so if they're not finding it with all these upgrades, I can't imagine their timeline, right, lines up with that.
yeah.
I can't imagine that they bring these upgrades and expect like, oh, it's like half a tenth.
Mm,
I don't think that was the plan. I think the
mm,
plan was to find 2/10, 2.5 tenths, right? And then the second part of upgrades and span would maybe find another 1.5 tenths or something.
mm.
They're not finding that. They're not finding that at all.
Yeah, that's very true.
Um, and McLaren like kind of is, and even Mercedes is. Mercedes is finding like a tenth,
Mm,
like 2/10, and that's why they've been able to close the gap and actually almost leapfrog Ferrari.
yeah.
Um,
No, with that, it does bring into question also like what they're gonna do going into 2025 because like you're saying, where it seems like well, I'm curious what Red Bull is gonna do also. If we're saying kind of like with what they have right now, they don't think they can go much higher right now with this concept. If they're also
Mhm.
well, they're probably not gonna like start from scratch obviously
They
because
can,
20 yeah,
they
26 is
can.
about to
No
come
team
around.
can.
Um,
Hmm.
but then it's curious, I guess, like how much I guess yeah, not just Ferrari but all the teams will consider maybe going like not all the way back to the beginning but maybe like taking a step back a bit and then maybe trying to pivot to a different avenue or if they'll keep just trying to push through the current path they're going trying to see if they can get a breakthrough there.
They're all going. They're none of them are going to go backwards.
You don't think they're gonna go
The only
backwards?
team, yeah, because the big thing is that once the new year starts in terms of CFD and wind tunnel time,
Mm,
all of that can now be put towards the 2026 car.
mm,
There is
that's
no
very true,
team
yeah.
that's going to want to start from scratch. That's why Williams completely just like threw away the entire book and started over this
Mm,
past winter. The only team I can see maybe doing it is Sauber, but
mm,
Sauber also kind of started from scratch over this winter, and it's just not working for them right now. They
mm,
have a different problem, I think. Um, so I think Ferrari, the bigger like another concern on top of what I've mentioned is what you just said. Like they can't do that. What you said, they
yeah.
can't start over again. Um, Not only would that
I
be
mean they can,
incredibly
it's just not a good
inefficient,
idea at all.
no, but also, what are you telling your people back at the factory, right? Like, okay, guys, third time's the charm. By the way, as soon as you're done with this, you gotta put full
Yeah, all
focus
that time into
into
2026.
another one, right? So in the span of two
Mm,
years, they're gonna have to develop three different cars
yeah.
completely from scratch. I don't see that being the way Vasseur is gonna walk in and be like, all right, guys, this is gonna work. All right,
Mm,
you gotta trust me. I
that's
don't
very
think that's
true.
gonna happen. Right. So they're stuck with this. They're stuck with the potential of their current design. So one, they chose so it's one of the two things. It's either one, they were wrong about the potential of their avenue, or two, something is not right, that they're not following the avenue in the timeline,
Mm,
like in an orderly fashion, in an
yeah.
efficient fashion.
Mm.
And so both are bad. Both are really, really bad. Both mean that on one hand, right, they chose
Yeah.
the wrong avenue. You gotta hire new engineers. If you can't like develop and plan upgrades in an efficient manner and bring them and to show that there's actual progress being made from the data from the factory to data on the track,
Mm.
right? You got to get new engineers. Like you have Hamilton coming. Like this is not
Yeah.
you should be building momentum. It is not a time to be falling backwards.
Mm.
I'm not even Tifosi, but like this is panic.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be
I mean,
secure about this right
I'm
now.
still very much hoping for Hamilton that his focus with Ferrari really is 2026. Because yeah, right
Yeah.
now he really should not. It doesn't seem like he should have his hopes up for 2025, and especially the way you're saying like. I do agree with you that that most likely is the way it's going to go in terms of like development with all the teams. And if that's the case,
Mhm.
if McLaren keep the trend they're going on right now, 2025 could hypothetically be a McLaren dominant season, which would be very fun to see. We have not had that in a very, very long time, and that would be very welcome on the grid.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah. Now you don't care.
Mhm.
You have no skin in the game. You don't care.
That's right. We are an objective podcast. All right, we don't make any judgments. All right.
We
Um,
cover the
but no,
subject
no,
real quick.
I'm totally down for a Piastri Norris fight, right, for the
Mm,
title. And I think really quick we can end it off with a little bit of that. The like looking forward to the rest of the season.
mm,
I think. Who do you think the big standout drivers that just pick two
mm.
are going to be for the rest of the season? And one of them is kind of obvious, but like, who would you say are the two like standouts? Like, you're like, oh, I'm most excited for these guys.
I feel like what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
Well, for sure, Norris. I think that's
there
the
you go.
obvious
Yeah,
one you're talking
number
about.
one. Uh huh.
Um, to be honest, the other one, even though like I spent the first to the beginning of this episode kind of hating on him, but I would say Russell because if he is
Mm-hmm,
like really comfortable in that car and Mercedes
hmm
is showing the products they're making, I very much see like another win for him coming up. I could
Yeah.
see another win for Hamilton, honestly. Like I think Hamilton just
hmm
needs a race where he locks in with the car, and if the Mercedes bring a car that's on par with Red Bull and McLaren, they absolutely can win that race.
Yeah, 100%. Canada has showed that their car can be okay over the bumps and the
Mhm.
curbs. So all you need is a track like Singapore,
Yeah, or
and
some changing
suddenly, right?
conditions too. You never know.
Mhm. No, I think totally. They could totally win another race this
Mm,
season. There are plenty of tracks coming up that are out of the ordinary, right? Which is haunting for Red Bull,
mm.
but great for a team like Mercedes to
Yeah,
try to find like, all right, this weekend it's all like
yeah, like go
we can
all
find the
in.
time.
Yeah.
hmm I would agree with you. I think Russell is definitely another driver that I'd be really excited in. I think the person who just ekes him out is Piastri. I
Mm.
think Piastri had only one down week in Spain, and even then finished, I think, in the top five, right,
Yeah,
or something like that, or finished like sixth or
I
something, right?
think yeah.
Um, he is getting better and better, and I know like like it's happening alongside the car. The car is getting better and better, and Norris is getting better and better. So
Mm.
people, I think, aren't looking at it as much. Piastri is a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, for
And
sure.
I think by next year, dude, Piastri is he I have no doubt that Piastri can be as good as Norris,
Mm.
like band for band, like or like, race for race. Like, no, the dude can definitely dish it out. In
Yeah,
qualifying, it may very well be that next year he's better than Norris in quali.
you think so?
He's just oh, dude, the dude just has endless pace. And
Mm.
what he lacks compared to Norris is stuff that can be learned. And the reason why I say that is because Norris learned it. In 2019, it's kind of similar to what Piastri has been like the past two seasons, where dude is awesome in quality, and then Carlos would destroy him in the race
Mm.
in 2019 and 2020, right? Because Carlos had all this experience and know how to manage tires, manage fuel, something as simple as lifting and coasting,
Mm.
right? Being able to do that efficiently is something you have to learn as you go. Um, so Piastri's only going to get better and
Yeah.
better. Whereas it's not defined that for someone like Carlos Sainz. It's
Mm.
not defined like that for someone like Lewis Hamilton. Where does Hamilton go? Like, how does Hamilton keep improving as a driver? You
Yeah.
could argue he's already the best he's going to be, if not getting worse because of his age.
Mhm.
So I think Piastri, relative to everybody else, is just going to get better and better.
No, I 100%
Yeah.
agree with you that, and even what I was saying about Russell, like for sure, yeah, because McLaren is a race winning car now. I
hmm
think yeah, it's very fair to say that. Then Piastri for sure has a race win in him this season as well too, and for
And
sure
you could
pole
tell.
position too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
pole position for sure.
I'm
I think
surprised he hasn't gotten a pole
ooh,
yet, actually. With like how
what
close
track
Norris has gone,
yeah, yeah. What track do you think it would be?
I don't know. I don't
Probably
know what his better tracks are.
Brazil. I'm gonna say it's Brazil,
You think
which
Brazil?
is kind of late into the season, but I think Piastri can pull it out of
All
Brazil.
right. I'll remember that. We'll write that one down and see if that
Write
prediction's
that
good.
down. Write
Because
that
you
down.
you predicted Leclerc's Monaco win.
I did, didn't I?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah,
It was like I think it was
for the
even
weekend.
before practice even started.
Mhm.
You just like texted. You said, "I think Leclerc is
It's
going
the
to win this
weekend.
this weekend," and he
hmm
did.
Yeah, and yeah, next episode we'll talk about why after that all of Leclerc's good luck was gone.
Yeah.
It's all gone.
Mm. I was gonna
Yeah.
say one other thing I guess that I'm looking forward to for the rest of the season is for sure just the battle between Norris and Max. I was actually gonna
Mhm.
text you before Austria and say, bro, because after watching the sprint. And when they were kind of battling there, I was like, "Oh, this is about to be a crazy season. This is not the last time we're
Mhm.
gonna see this." And I was literally gonna text you, and I was gonna say, "Hey, I think in the next couple of crashes, in the next couple of races, they're definitely gonna crash." And then they crashed that race, and I said,
You called
"Oh,
it.
so it's already like that. It's already like that."
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
the rest of the season is gonna be chaotic.
I don't think it's going to get any better either.
Oh,
I think
definitely not. Definitely
they're going
not.
to get into more incidents,
Yeah.
and drivers like Russell and drivers like
MPSC.
Piastri are going to take advantage of it.
Hmm.
So it's going to be great.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. We'll see y'all next week.